Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, How to Get Rid of Language Barriers in ServiceNow. My name is Emilia Johannesson and I will be your moderator today. I work on the marketing team here at the Fujitsu ServiceNow practice and I'm excited to be hosting this session for you today. In this webinar, we will show you how to solve language challenges with translations directly in ServiceNow using cutting-edge machine learning capabilities in Translator Bot. I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, which will be Matthias Laugesen, Assistant Regional Director in our Fujitsu ServiceNow practice in Scandinavia. Before I hand the mic over to Matthias, I have a few practicalities I would like to cover. The webinar is scheduled to last for 45 minutes with a Q&A session in the end. You will all be muted throughout the webinar to avoid any interruptions. If you want to ask questions, please submit these by using that section called Questions in the menu on your right side of the screen. We will do as many questions as possible within the time frame in the end. If your question is not answered, we will contact you with the answer after the webinar has ended. Within the next days, you will receive an email with the slides and a recording of this presentation. Please enjoy the session as I hand over the mic to Matthias, who will kick things off. Matthias, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining. So today's topic is the Translator Bot, interlinguistic communication in the ServiceNow platform. So what is this all about? It's basically something that we encountered a few years ago as a challenge with many ServiceNow platforms and all the issues that this is about. This is about the way we make things work, and therefore we want to also give a interlinguistic capability in the platform to actually support the way we work. The agenda for today is, first of all, to talk about the challenge. It is to talk about the different translator bots that we've created. It's about a customer reference, who uses our translator bots. It's a demo of one of the bots and how it works in the platform, just to give you a quick overview of how that looks. And then finally, we will go through a value calculator, which will give you an indication of what could be the financial benefits that you can get from using the translator bots. So that's what we're going to go through today. So if we start out with the challenge, the challenge is that we very often see that requesters and supporters, whether this is an IT or it's an HR or wherever it might be, they talk different languages. So that often means that people will not even be able to communicate, and wonderful to have a good workflow system as ServiceNow, but if we don't speak the same language, we won't get anywhere. The next thing is that we have a long time to resolution due to bad communication, or to miscommunication, if you will, where you have two parties, the supporter and the requester, misunderstanding each other because they're communicating in a language where they are not used to communicate. The next thing is that users do not log their tickets due to language barriers. We very often see in many companies that you have a lot of employees who would never log a ticket, for example, to IT, basically due to the only reason that they do not want to be called up by someone who speaks English and do not speak their native language because they don't feel comfortable in communicating in that language, or it just takes so much time to go through IT, or this might be HR or finance or whoever it might be, that they simply rather want to avoid it. We've seen examples of this going up to 30 to 40% of all the incidents assumed not being logged. The last one is that when you, for example, are outsourcing your IT or your general global business support services like finance or HR and so on, you will very often see that you will outsource this to an external party. But purchasing support in many languages will also be very expensive. So this is one of the additional things that if you are a company that operates within 30 countries, you would also need to buy your language support in 30 languages, maybe a little less, but nevertheless, that has a huge financial impact. If we look to the Translator Bot and what it's all about, it is, if we start to the left, the basic engine in it. It is using machine learning algorithms. And that means that as this is being used over time, it improves. So the quality in itself will improve by itself the more that it's being used. It is using semantic translation. That means it's not the usual one-to-one dictionary lookup that you would see. It basically maps the meaning of a sentence and then translate the meaning of a sentence into the new language. And then the last thing is that it uses a interlingua enabling translation between languages where there has not been translations before. So what does this mean? This is a capability, especially within the Google Translator that we often use. The Google Translation engine that behind it is, first of all, the reason that we use this is because this is the most accurate one, and it's also the one and is outperforming every other translation engine with quite a lot in all the studies we have made. On top of that, it is also the one that is being trained the most. So as this is being trained over the internet in general, it also means that the translator bot that you're buying into will also improve. The way that the Google machine learning algorithms work is that it, for example, translates from, for example, Danish and Denmark, where I'm from, it translates from Danish into an interlinguistic mapping of the meaning of the sentence and then into English. That also means if you are then translating from, let's say, a Nepalese or something like this into English, it will map from Nepalese into the interlingua and then into English. By having this interlingua, it also means that it is mapping the meaning of the sentences. So even though I never train this module in translating from Danish to Nepalese, this interlingua does that. This is also improving over time. So that means by translating from Danish to English and English to Danish, and from Nepalese to English and from English to Nepalese, the Danish to Nepalese and Nepalese to Danish translation is also getting better. So that's kind of the engine that runs behind it. So which modules do we have when we want to look to apply this to our ServiceNow platform? We have 6 functional modules that you can apply into it. The first one is the Conversation Translation Bot. This Conversation Translation Bot is also what I'm going to show you here later on today. And that is a translation in your tickets. So you have all your free text fields where you're communicating back and forth between a end user and a supporter. And then we're going to show how you can translate the description or the comments and so on. The next one is the chat translation module, where you can translate whatever you write in a chat, whether that's with an end user or it is in the backend. You can also apply these translations in the chat. If we think that a bit further ahead, it also means that you can use this as a link before a chatbot. So a very often seen, for example, in some of the small languages, for example, like where I'm from in Danish, we do not have that well-developed chatbots. So what if we could translate from Danish into English, use an English chatbot, the chatbot answers in English, and then it translates the English answer into Danish. That can be applied. We already have, so that's something that you can extend this functionality that we have in the chat module, but it reaches directly into the Connect chat in ServiceNow. The next one is the Notification Translation Bot. The notification translation is translating all the notifications going out. Obviously, you can always just code them, hard code them if you have very few languages. But let's say that you are to roll out 20 different ServiceNow modules sending out notifications into 30 countries. Every module has then maybe 5 different notifications. That is a lot of translation to do. And it does not help you with all the variables in the notification. So that can be applied as well. The same thing goes for the knowledge. Let's say that we're operating in 30 languages, in 30 countries and in 30 languages. But we only have, for example, HR support in English. In that case, what we can do is that we can take the entire employee handbook and then translate all these different knowledge articles into the 30 languages, saving a lot of time, making it available for every user in every country. Next one is the Platform Translation Bot. Platform Translation Bot is helping translating the ServiceNow platform itself. So that means translating everything you, for example, see in the backend, translating a full portal and so on. The thing on this Platform Translation Bot, which you should be aware of, is that that is the least accurate of all the modules. Just so you know, because all of you here has probably been working with ServiceNow and knows that it's very difficult to translate the word state into one specific word. It could mean many things. It could be a country, it could be states like in the United States, it could actually also be emirate, it could be a status, it could be many things. So this can be a help to speed up the translation of a portal. So let's say you need to translate the entire system into 6 different languages. This can help you maybe get 60% of the way, thereby speeding it up and saving you a lot of money. The last one is the vendor translation bot. Let's say that you are outsourcing to an only English service desk. In that case, you can add these translations as a part of your integration between your ServiceNow platform and the external vendor's ITSM system or ticketing system, which then means that you can just purchase the support in one language, but you can provide your end users with support in their local language. Customer reference, we have a good example of Hydro. Hydro is a global company operating mainly, in this case, is operating in countries where they speak mainly Portuguese, Norwegian, German. They're now also about to roll this out to many other countries, which has, for example, Hungarian and so on. Hydro is, they have a global ServiceNow rollout. They operate in these countries. The purpose that they wanted to use this for was not even driven by the financial business case as much as it was for the user experience. So for them, it was about providing the users with such an experience that they can feel comfortable in using the support that they get from the central IT. That also means that it can improve the general service experience, not just the quick user experience on the portal, but in general that you feel you get a better service from IT, and that the time to delivery of all this support is so much faster if we actually understand each other. So we made this as a co-creation project. So the entire module here has been built on something that Fujitsu came up with. We then co-developed the first module with Hydro, and then we have extended this solution into other customers around the globe. The value calculator. So before moving on to our value calculator, I would like to just give you a quick demo. If we go back here to our conversation chatbot. Not chatbot, our conversation translation bot. So if we look to our ticket handling. So let's say we start now on a portal. On a portal, you will very often find that an end user, right now we have the glasses on of an end user. You would go into your ticket and open up your ticket and to see how it goes with it. You want to see the latest updates here. So what you're going to do is that you can look through whatever you have written. So you would see here that I have written, my computer does not work, can you help? And then, of course, I can choose to translate whatever I wrote myself into English. My computer is not working, can you help? Or I can go up and see, I don't read English. So that's obviously a problem for me as I speak Danish. So what I can do here is I can translate this into Danish, which is my preferred language, and then translate it. Or I can translate this into French, and so on. So you would see there's many different options for translating this into different languages, and we can enable quite a lot more than what you see here. If we then turn the cube and become Jane Andrews is then the incident analyst who will then be working on the other side of the cube of this. So let's see if we can find her screen, which would be there. So right now we are Jane Andrews. We logged in and we can see in our typical ServiceNow setup that this is a normal incident form with a few extensions of it, obviously. But what we want to translate now is we have a short description. We have a description next to it. These buttons pop up where we can go in and say, I want to translate problem med computer, which is Danish. So I guess a lot of you don't understand it. So we translate this into English, press the button, and it pops up. Note that this is not corrupting the original data of the ticket, which means that this is added as a user help and a UI help for whoever is using the system. The same thing goes down here where you see that this is user's laptop is broken. I can then choose to translate this into, for example, Dutch, and then it pops up in Dutch. This can be applied to any field. What we often say is that this should be applied to all free text fields. So this means it could also be applied down here where we have our history. So in our history, you would also be able to see that we can translate this, for example, just the same thing that we saw out on the portal, can translate this into Norwegian. I could translate this into Swedish. So you will always be able to choose your own language, your own preferred language that you want to translate into, and then the ServiceNow administrators can simply go in and add it for you. So what you've seen now is just a very simple incident setup where we have enabled it for the incident. So how does it look from an administration point of view? From an administration point of view, if we try now to move to the backend here, we can go to our Translator Bot module. So right now, I'm not the end user anymore. I'm not the ITIL user anymore or supporter. I'm now taking on the hat as an administrator of the platform. I then go into my Translator Bot module here. What I'm focusing on is my administration modules here. First of all, I of course get a dashboard where I can see the utilization of it and how many translations there are. I can also go into my available languages. So this is where I choose, if you remember the drop down that we saw before here, the drop down that shows you the different languages, I can go in and manipulate that directly as my preferences in production. So we don't have to move things back and forth between the different instances. In this case, we have connected up to Google. We also have an out-of-the-box connect to Microsoft Translator. Google has the way best quality in this. So right now, you can see that we have all the languages. You can see the order, and there will be whether or not they're visible or not. So let me say I want to see all the ones which are visible at the moment. So I filter out all the ones which is not visible. And you will now see that it says French, English, Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, Dutch, just as we have it here in our dropdown. So let's say I want English to be on the top. I can simply go in and change this to, for example, 5. That means it will now come on top. I want to disable Swedish. So I disable this one to false. And then I want to enable a new language. So I go back to all of the languages. And let's say I want to enable, let's say, for example, what could we take? We could take Hindi, which could be very useful. So I enable this, set it to true. Put the order, let's just say 1000, so I know it's in the end of it. So what I've done now is that I've rearranged whatever was in that functionality. So if I go in and say I want to see all the ones which are true, by order, it should say English, French, Danish, Norwegian, Dutch, and Hindi. Which means whenever I'm reloading this page, you will now see that whatever you have here out on the side is now having English, French, Danish, Norwegian, Dutch, Hindi. So this means it's a very simple way to add these capability across different languages. So the next thing is we now want to use it not just in the incident module, but this is a basic platform capability that you can apply across the entire ServiceNow platform. So what you do is that you can go into our field setup here. So let's look at how this looks. What you do is that you simply create a reference table here where you choose which table should it work on, and then finally also which fields should this drop down appear next to. So if we, for example, take the first record here and open this, you would see that it's a very simple form. And this one is for the incident table. It is active. It should show on the activity log. That means the history that you see down here, if we have enabled it. And it should work on the following fields. So if I deactivate this and update the record, and the next time I then reload my incident, you very fast see that this is now not appearing. So I can go back into my setup here, and now I want to reactivate it, but I want to remove it from our description. I simply do it like this, update it, go back in here, reload my page. Then you would see that it only appears on the top one here, on the short description and not on the description. There you go. Still with everything that we have enabled. The same thing goes as you have a reusable widget to the portals that you can reuse. We can also change the language on the button. Right now it says translate everywhere. But if you then have a system which is translated, for example, to French, then you can also choose what should the word in the button itself be when it is in French, and so on. And then, of course, you also have your translation history. The translation history is very important because that also enables your additional security log and works as a security log. So how does this work? The idea here is that whenever we do a translation, we're sending information outside of the platform. In the previous situation, if people don't understand, they simply just go up to Google Translate in a new in that browser, and they translate something, which means they're sending information out of your system, and it might be containing sensitive information. By having this log, we can monitor exactly what we're sending out, and make a judgment call whether or not this poses an issue. If it poses an issue, we know exactly who has initiated it and when was it initiated, so that means we can handle a potential security threat in the future. The next thing I would like to move to, this was the short demo. Of course, we have some other modules as well, but as of now, I would like to continue on to the value calculator. The value calculator can also be downloaded from our home pages. We can also send this around to you after the webinar. So what you have in here is a quick sum up of all the different modules. So depending on how many of these modules you want to purchase, you can go in here and see what could your return on investment be. And then you would see this is the summary of it, and then you have your conversation translation bot, the chat translation bot, notification translation bot, etc. But let's start by only focusing on our, let me just zoom a bit here. Like this. Let's start by focusing on our conversation translation bot. Let's say we start, this is the one that I just showed you. Let's start by saying, okay, how many percentages of our tickets would this capability be relevant to? Because if people speak English and the support is in English, there's no reason to translate it. So let's say we just say maybe it's 40% of all our tickets where this could be useful. We can then go in and say approximately how much do we save for an end user in time if they can speak their own native language. let's say we set this up to 7 minutes. A backend user, that means the supporter, they might be saving, I don't know, maybe even 10 minutes per ticket. We know that we have maybe 200,000 tickets per year and a cost per employee, maybe not on 70, but on 50 euros per hour. Basically ends up with a financial benefit per year on 1.1 million euros. At the same time, we can then go down and then change our setup. We know that it's 200,000. Let's say it's, in a year, it goes down to 150, and it's maybe only 35%, and it's 5 minutes and 5 minutes. But we still have a very good business case in this. Still a lot, very high return on investment, because this is something that you can apply to every one of your modules across the entire ServiceNow platform. So the financial benefits alone holds a huge potential. That being said, we can also go to the whole other side of it, which is the user experience, and you providing a very good and solid service experience out to your end users. And this is what you would be able to see in here. Very good. I've now been through half an hour more or less. So this is how Fujitsu is shaping tomorrow with you. Any questions?
Thank you, Matthias. Yes, we have received 2 questions for you. I'll start with the first one. How does this perform up against Microsoft Translator and Watson or other translation engines?
Yes. The reason that we have that, what I'm showing you now, and the explanation of the machine learning algorithm has been up against Google is because we have done some research across many translation modules on which one performs the best. We've done this across 12 different languages to see the accuracy of a translation. When we look at this accuracy of translation, the Google Translator is outperforming all the other translation modules by far. We also know that this is the most used translation engine in the world and on the internet, which also means this is the one that exponentially grows much faster than any other translation module, because the engine that is used across all platforms is the same. You would also see that, for example, ServiceNow has just now released, or is about to release, something that looks a bit like this. It's a little bit behind, but if you also look to what they're using, they're not using the Google Translator, which in one of the things that we really look forward to see is then how accurate could they be. Because my worst fears is that ServiceNow will not be able to provide a translation with a high degree of accuracy. That was at least what we found when we did these studies, and we are doing our ongoing monitoring of the quality in it. So that's the first setup. Yeah.
Thank you. Another one is, can the engine be reused for new features?
Yes, of course. So whatever we have built here, be aware that, and the reason that we have set it up like this is because that our administration and security module here in the middle also holds the central engine. So the whole engine here can be reused for new features. That means that you can build new features. So just like we have these standard modules, we could also extend this with new modules in the future, where you can call this integration. You can call it's basically a script include, which can be called across the entire platform. So the engine itself is reusable and can be further developed on. So for all you who would like to meddle around with this, this is a free platform capability to use.
Thank you again, Matthias. Next one is, how is the commercial model? Subscription or fixed price? Does languages click a fee, or is all included?
Yes, good question. First of all, the way that we sell this is that we know that this can grow a lot over time. So the way that the commercial model around this is that we are charging basically based on the number of fulfillers. So that means that you would know exactly what it is, and then we do a one-time off fee, so you get this as a platform capability, basically to enable you to use this and apply it across your entire platform, because we know this is some of the downsides to the way that ServiceNow is doing the subscriptions, is that the moment where you take just one capability and use it, you will be charged by it. So when I'm saying this is a platform capability, that is what I mean. We do a one-time off capability for you to add this to your platform capability portfolio. On the next side, you then have your integration, which will be, and the way that this is charged, for example, from Google, is that it's charged per character. I can see that everything that we have done so far is that you get so much for free from Google, and the amount of translation that goes through, even when you have a couple of thousand users, will never amount to more than 100 euros per year or something like this. And this is a very worst case scenario. I've seen many of these translation bills has been on around $5-6. That's what we have seen so far. But it also requires an additional subscription fee to the Google API. But however, this is such a small little fee that it is basically not taken into the business case and shouldn't be. It poses no risk as such.
Thank you. Let's hop over to the next one. How does this work together with the default language setting in the interface? Is there a way to use that info to translate this default to this language without having a drop down next to the field that needs translation?
Very good question. That was actually part of our first initial design. The reason that we went over to a button was due to security restrictions, because if you automate, it can easily be done. We actually had a previous iteration that did it based on your preferred language. But be aware that by not having a button, you would automatically send information out of your platform with no control over what is the content. Meaning, if you write a social and security number within a description, that will automatically be sent outside of your platform, which then poses a larger security risk. So the way that we chose to handle this, and for example, at Hydro, what we also see at some of our other large enterprise customers, is that we're saying we are pushing this responsibility, as it always is, to our end users. So that means if we have told the end users, if you press this button, that means you're sending information out, ensure that there is no confidential information there. At the same time, the translation history of the security log then enables us to monitor this afterwards. But if you do the judgment call that you want to automate this, this can easily be done, yes.
Great. Is it possible to modify translations for internal words like the state field, corporate language?
So first of all, for the platform, I guess in this case, we're talking about the platform translation bot. For the platform translation bot, what you get is a first suggestion that you would then need to review. What we see is that there is approximately, depending on the language, a accuracy on about 60%, but it would still need a manual review of all this. It's just that you don't need to, you would probably be right 60% of the time, but you still need a manual review. So that's the first thing. The next thing that leads me on to is, what if you could tell it, for example, that incident should always be translated to incident in this case, or something like this, or so you have some kind of white labels translations or something. This can be added. It's not a part of the platform itself, but we have been doing some proof of concepts where we didn't translate this part, and that can be done, but it's not a part of the features we provide, but it can be extended to it.
Thank you, Matthias, and thank you to all of the participants that showed up today. This was all that we had for you today, and we hope that you found the session useful. As already said in the beginning, you will receive an email with link to the presentation and the recording. If you want to get in touch with us regarding Translator Bot in ServiceNow, please feel free to contact Matthias or anyone in our Fujitsu ServiceNow team who will be able to give you more information. We frequently host webinars related to the ServiceNow platform, so make sure you follow us on LinkedIn to get updates or visit our website where you can sign up for our newsletter. I will end this webinar by wishing you a great day. Thank you all.
And I might also add that if you would be interested in us holding a specific demo for you or an additional one, we will always be at your service for doing so.